ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोर्श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायिने कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौरत्विषे नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयादितरतश्चार्थेषु भिग्यस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्म हृदय आदि कवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः। तेजो वारि मृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, chapter number 22, beginning from verse number 31. And these are instructions of Kumaraj to Prithu Maharaj. And in the previous verses we read about their instruction on bhakti and how when bhakti becomes manifest, the subtle body is destroyed, just as the fire burns the wood, and therefore one becomes naturally liberated. So just as when we eat food and the food gets digested, and it happens without our conscious participation. And as soon as we eat food, the digestive process begins. So in the same way, when one takes to devotional service, then the liberation automatically happens without the knowledge of the devotee. As long as the linga deha is there, which is called here a jiva kosha, which means the covering of the jiva, then there is bondage. Because real bondage is the identification with the covering. So this covering is removed, and it is said that dahati aviryam hridayam jiva kosham. So then the person or the devotee naturally becomes free. And then one sees Lord's presence everywhere. Now we don't see the Lord because we are identifying with the kosha, with the mind and the body. And this mind and body and senses, they are designed to go externally. Paranchi khani vetranat svambhu parang pashyati nantaratma. So we are only experiencing things external. Lord is called Pratyakatma, or who is internal. self-effulgent. The objects outside in the material world, they are not self-effulgent. They need to be revealed by the light, by the knowledge. So now our senses are always engaged in these objects. But if we start performing devotional service, then this process starts changing. And our awareness, which is now focused on external objects, starts focusing on the Lord. So just like a torchlight, if you have a torchlight in your hand and you turn it on, you see the objects away from you. Unless you turn it to yourself, then you can see yourself in the dark, if it is dark all around. So awareness is something like that. Now our focus is only on external objects through the senses. And devotional service means turning the awareness. That's what Krishna says, that the most confidential thing, he says, I am going to tell you the most confidential thing, Sarvagahya Tamam Bhuya, Srinu me Paramam Vachan, this is my supreme, topmost instruction. So he says, Manmana. And that is actually the essence of Bhagavad Gita, that fix your mind on me. Which means turn your awareness. Because mind is that which is putting us into the illusion of enjoyment and creating the duality. Actually there is only Lord everywhere. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudharlama. There is only Vasudeva. Krishna says such a person who knows this is very rare, Durlabha. So actually there is only Lord everywhere, but we don't see it in that way because of the gunas of Prakriti. These gunas, they make things look different than Lord, and if it is not Lord. So in Bhagavatam it is mentioned that Dravyam karma cha kalasya svabhava jiva eva cha vasudevat prithak brahma nanyasti iti kashana. That this dravya, all the material objects, kala or time, karma, svabhava, every object has got its own nature, and the jivas, the living beings. So vasudevat prithak Brahman. Say that this is not different from Vasudeva. Everything is Vasudeva. So there is only one tattva. Vadanti tattvadas tattvam yajnanam advayam. So there is only one absolute reality, that is Vasudeva, that is Krishna. He is the supreme tattva. And it is only He who is manifest. But we don't see Him and we see things as if they are to be enjoyed by us. So when this is burnt, then he says, Para Atmanor Yad Vyavdhanam Purastad Naiv Atmanor Bhavantar Vichasta. When this distinction which was created between ourselves and the Lord is removed, and then one does not see things, just as when you wake up you don't see the objects of the dream. So that was described. And then he described how the conditioned being, they are involved in this material world. So he says that as long as there is a nimitta, then this duality, this difference, this distinction remains. And then he gave the whole process that the senses, they become attracted to sense objects. Then mind is attracted by the senses. And then one loses the discrimination. So he says this intelligence or this sense of discrimination is there in the soul. This knowledge of the soul, that I am soul and this is matter, this is there. So this is lost because of the sense objects. Just like the grass takes the water from the lake. So he continues speaking. Brashyati anusmritis chittam jnana bhransa smriti kshaye tadrodham kavya prahur atma pannavam atmanaha. So when this viveka, this discrimination is lost, then one loses memory. So that is smriti. Drashyati anusmriti chittam. And jnana bhransa smriti kshaya. When memory is lost, then knowledge is lost. Because knowledge is based on memory. Whatever we experience, that is stored inside us as samskaras. So knowledge means you try to retract, activate those samskaras. You have memorized Bhagavad Gita slokas, but they are not in your mind all the time. They come into the mind when you recollect them from the memory. But if memory is lost, you cannot recollect. So then you say, I forgot. So if you forgot means now you have no knowledge of Gita. So then memory loses when knowledge is lost. And tadrodham kavya prahur atma pannavam. And when knowledge is lost, then the people, learned people, the scholars, the pandit, they say that person has lost himself. Person has destroyed himself. Because jnane nihina pasubhi samana. Ahar nidra bhai maithunam cha samanam etat pasubhi. So human beings and animals, they are by instinct doing things, eating, sleeping, procreating, defending. It's going on by instinct. Human beings are superior because of knowledge, especially knowledge of the self. So if that knowledge is lost, and there is no discrimination, there is no memory, then it's like animals don't have much memory. Dog comes, chasing away, monkey comes, chasing away. After a few minutes comes back, forgets. So that is the situation also. If we lose our memory, then we become also like the animals. So Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti said that tatascha chittam chetanamanu tasyam apritayam satyam smriti purva aparanusandhanam pashyati. So when this chetana is lost, this consciousness of knowing things different from yourself, discrimination between matter and spirit, then the memory is lost, which means you don't know what is before and what is after. There is no idea. So animals, they live in the present. There is famous book, Power of Now. Right? So animals are living in the power of now. They are not making plans that I am going to do this after 5 years. When I retire, I will go to the island and live there. They just live in the present. The trees, plants, birds, beasts, they are always living in present. Because they don't have knowledge of the past and future. They don't have this. So human beings can also become like that and have the power of now. So when this knowledge of Purva and Par is lost, then one is finished. So he says that this is what the learned people call destroying oneself or committing spiritual suicide. नाता परतरो लोके पुंस स्वार्थ व्यतिक्रम यद अध्यन्यस्य प्रेयस्त्वम आत्मनस्त स्वव्यतिक्रमात्. He says that there is no greater loss than this, than losing oneself. So self is actually not lost really, but lost means not being aware of it, forgetting it. So sometimes people actually get so much absorbed that they forget about themselves also. So once some board meeting was going on, one man who was also working in the company, he came, he opened the door and people were sitting and he asked that, have you seen John? And everybody looked at him and he said, what are you saying? You are John. So he actually forgot about himself. So usually people are not lost up to that extent. That is really extreme, that you even forget your own name. Remembering your own name is the deepest memory you have. To forget that means completely lost. So he says that this is the greatest loss, to lose one's own self, to lose one's own memory. So there is no higher loss than that. Not that you lose wealth, that you lose money. You can lose anything else, you can gain it. But if you lose your own self, then what is the value of money? Somebody turns insane. Insane means the person doesn't know who is he. What is the meaning that if he has got $1 billion in bank? There is no meaning. He is lost. So if we are lost like that, then this is the greatest loss. Therefore, to protect oneself, one can lose everything. So as Hitler says that one should protect wife, Dara Rakshet Dhanairapi, and one should protect one's wealth. But if one has to lose one's wealth and protect wife, then protect wife. Dara Rakshet Dhanairapi. But if one has to protect oneself, then everything else. So he says that this is the swarth, complete loss. Yad adhyanyasya prayastvam. Why? Because anything you like, it is because of liking for the self. If you like somebody, you like because you have put yourself into that person. As long as yourself is into that person, then you like it. You take away yourself from that person, that same person becomes your enemy. You don't like to see that person, you don't want to be with that person anymore, you don't want to hear anything about that person. So that's why Yajnavalkya, he says in the Upanishad to Maitreyi, Areva Maitreyi, na patyu kamaya pati priyo bhavati, atmane kamaya tu pati priyo bhavati. That wife does not love the husband for the sake of husband, she loves the husband for the sake of the self. So this is the truth. And this is not only for the wife, but he also says for the husband. And husband does not love wife for the sake of wife, for the self. And then he says for the wealth, he don't love the children, wealth, anything for the sake of them. We love because of the self. Even in this body we love as long as there is a self in it. When the self leaves, nobody loves the body. Then it becomes very clear that the love was because of the self. As long as the self is there in the body, we love the body. And that is because of the self. Self is the cause for loving the body, not the body itself. And we love self because of the super self. So love for self is there because of the Lord, because the original love is only for the Lord. So this is made clear in the 10th Canto of Bhagavatam, in this pastime when the cowherd boys were grazing their calves on the side of Govardhan, and the cowherd men were grazing the cows on top of the hill. And when these cows saw the calves, they ran like mad. And the cowherd men tried to stop them, but they could not. And when they themselves saw their children, they also ran. And they came and they were embracing their children, and the cows were licking the calves. And this is because these cowherd boys and calves, they were Krishna himself. After Brahma had stolen the actual cowherd boys and calves, and Krishna manifested the same number of cowherd boys and calves. So although the cows loved their calves when they had their actual calves, but when Krishna became the calf, their love was so much that it was just irresistible. So that showed that the love for Krishna is the highest. Cowherd men loved their children, but now when they saw Krishna in the form of their own children, they could not resist themselves. So that pastime shows that how Krishna is actually the ultimate object of love. So that's why Uttama Bhakti, when it is defined by Rupa Goswami, he uses the word Krishna, Krishna Anukulena, Anusilanam Bhakti. He could have used some other word also, but specifically using the word Krishna. He could have used Vishnu or Paramatma, Ishvara or something. Ishanukulena, he could have said. So this love ultimately is emanating from Krishna, even in the material world. Whatever you see some shadow, it is because coming from the self, and the love for self is because of the super soul, and super soul is Krishna. So if you lose the self, then you lose everything. So there is also a statement in the Bible, something like that, to lose your, or to gain your soul at the cost of everything.
Yes,
Some statement is there in Bible language. If you lose your soul, even if you gain the whole world, it has no meaning. There is a statement like that. So this is what it really means.
What's the use of gaining the whole world if you lose
if you
yourself?
lose yourself?
Yes. So this is actually the verse. Exactly the same.
You should make a footnote in the Bible.
So because the Sanskrit actually says that Nataha partaro loke pumsa swatvati karma. So this is the loss. And then the reason is given here, which is not given in Bible. Why is it like this? It says yad adhyanyasya preyastvam. That any love you have for anything other than you, it is because of you only. As soon as you associate with something that this is mine, my wife, my children, my husband, my lover, my house, my car, my country, as long as you have this feeling of mine, which means as long as you have put yourself into it, mine means you have put yourself into it, then you love it. And when you pull back that mine, then it is gone. So that's why he says that Atmana Swagatikramat. So the commentary says Yad Yasmat Atmanah Sakashat Anyasya Dehade Priyastum. So it is because of this Atma that there is love or affection or attachment in body, etc. Idrisham adhikam. Too much. Sometimes people become attached so much that more than even one's own self, that they can even commit suicide if they don't get that, right? Or they sacrifice their own life for the sake of country or something they like. So adhikam. Yadva naividyate dhi paramarsa yat. Then this word adhi means, adhik means more. He gives another twist to this word. Dhi also means intelligence, and adhi means no intelligence. So this love, which is too much, he says, is there because the guy is not using his intelligence. So navidyate dhi paramarsho, because there is no deliberation, proper understanding. Yat tattacha svenaiva svataiva yo vyatikramas tasmat natu anyat karanam asti. So there is no other cause for this except this discrimination. Jivasya tasya avidya sansargo anadrid yadruchika eva iti prak pratipadita. Now this is a very crucial point of Indian philosophical schools, and practically everyone accepts this, that this avidya or ignorance of the self in the jiva is anadi. It has no beginning, because it's very difficult to explain it in any other manner philosophically without creating trouble. So when you say anadi, it's like you postpone the problem. Pass the buck. So now you think when it happened. So this is a very good technique. It's anadi. And then he uses another word, yadrichika eva. Because anadi itself means causeless. Because if it has no beginning, it has no cause. And if it has no cause, there is nothing more you can say about it. When you try to describe certain things, you describe in cause and effect relationship. But if there is no cause, what can you say? You just say, well, this is how is it? It is, you have to accept it. No questions asked. But he says this is yadrichik, that somehow or other, which means ultimately by the will of the Lord, it is like this. So he said this we have explained before. Tasmat jeev ashrayakah paramatma vishayakah priti atishayo yujyate. So he says therefore this priti, which is related with Paramatma, who is the shelter of the jiva, that is the appropriate thing. That is the thing to be acquired. This is the conclusion. So first he explained in a positive sense that one should do bhakti, direct instruction, and what happens if one has bhakti. And then the negative manner, if one does not have bhakti, then what happens? So in both by positive description and negative description, Anvaya and Vyatireka, bhakti is established by Sanat Kumara. Tadartham bhaktireva kartum uchita iti bhava. So therefore the conclusion is that it is indeed appropriate only to engage in bhakti and not get into some other trips like vipassana. Just do upasana. Forget about vipassana. So, because even that is not going to help you ultimately. You can control your mind, but mind itself is a trouble. So, arthendriya arthabhidhyanam sarvarthapavannavo nrinam bhransito jnana vijnane yena vinsha avishati mukhyatam. So, artha indriya artha abhidhyanam. If one is always meditating on the objects of the senses and one works only for that reason, or working only to accumulate wealth, then this will destroy the human life. Then sarva artha pavanna. So dhan, the wealth is called artha, and it is the also anartha. Artha means wealth. Artha also means desirable object. And anartha means that which creates problem. So he says that this artha is the cause of all anartha. Artha indriya artha vidyanam. That if one is working only for wealth and then sense objects, because wealth in itself is useless. It is useful only if you get something from wealth. So sarva artha navunranam. Then one loses all pristine goal of human life and becomes an animal. And bhransito jnana vijnana yena avasati mukhyatam. Then one falls down from transcendental knowledge and realization, and one enters into immovable form of life, like become a tree or a plant or a creeper or a grass. Things which don't move. No water problem. You become stable because you are meditating. So now you stand like a tree and go on doing vipassana. No thoughts of present, no thoughts of the past, no thoughts of the future. You are in perfect meditation. No disturbance, heat or cold, wind or storm, snow. Nothing bothers you. You are happy. So this is called mukhyatam. This is the prime destination. Yattu arthasya janasya indriyarthanam vishyanam cha dhyanam tadeva sarvartha nasa. So when people are just meditating on wealth and sense objects, then their ultimate goal of life is completely destroyed, lost. Yena abhidhyanena jnanat vinashat cha bhansito mukhyatam. Why? Because by that meditation, they lose their awareness of the self. And Bhransita, falling down from there, Mukhyatam Sthavartam. Then they will take birth, something like plant, tree, or become a mountain, very stable. Because Krishna says Thavara Nam Himalaya. that among the stable beings I am Himalaya. So you can become one part of the Himalaya, somewhere in one corner. Stay very stable. Of course, these days they say that Himalaya is prone to earthquakes. Sometimes it's also moving. Maybe it's the ecstasy of meditation. Meditating when ecstasy comes. So then what is the advice? Says na kuryat karichit sangam tamastivram titirishu dharmartha kama mokshanam yadatyanta vidhatakam. Says therefore do not become attached to these sense objects. Sangha means friendship. So don't be friendly with them. Means having affection for the sense object. If one wants to transcend ignorance, if one wants to remain in ignorance, then this is a good program. Meditate on sense objects and you have attained perfection. Because then you become a tree. So that is the perfection if one wants to remain in the ignorance. This tree is quite ignorant. You can cut the branch, doesn't say anything. So he says that if one desires to transcend ignorance, then do not become attached in any sense object. Why? Because this attachment, it is the greatest obstacle not only for moksha but even dharma, artha and kama. Even there is a problem. So of course this dharma, artha, kama, when we say what you are saying, you just now you said that one become attached to artha and kama, and then this is destroyed. Now you are saying that this attachment is an obstacle to them also. So this is dharma, artha, kama which are favorable to moksha. Because certain principles are favorable, as in the Yoga Sutra they are said, Vittaya, Panchataya, Klishta, Klishta. Some vrittis, some functions of the senses are favorable for yoga. In the same way, some wealth is favorable, some sense objects are favorable. You want to do worship to the Lord, you need flowers, fruits, house. These are favorable things. But if one is attached to sense enjoyment, then that sense of enjoyment will become an obstacle even to these objects which are favorable for service. Because then you will neglect them. So, therefore one should remain completely free from this type of attachment. Sangam dharma shastra nishiddham eva natu vishayasakti matram. Nishiddha itar vishayasakti matam eva trivargya adhikara vikutechita. So there are two explanations of this. Because it says dharma, kama, mokshanam, these are also destroyed. So some people explain like this, that this attachment here is the attachment which is prohibited in the scriptures, religious scriptures like Manusmriti. Not complete attachment to all objects. Because whether you want to follow karma marga, then also you need some objects. So it says niseddha itar vishayasakti matam eva trivargo adhikara. Because if one is following the path of trivarga, there are four purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama and moksha. if one is following the Purushartha of Dharma, Artha or Kama, according to scriptural injunctions, which also you can do, then they are advised not to engage in attachment or have attachment to forbidden things, such as illicit relations with others' wife, drinking, all these are forbidden. Not complete detachment. So this is how some people have explained it. And Sangam Vishya Shakti Matram Eva Dharmadyopi Atra Mokshasya Anukula Eva Grahya Dharmasya Piyargasya Tinyayana Ityana. And some people say that here attachment means attachment to anything which is not favorable to moksha. Because dharmasya apvargasya nartha that dharma is meant for apvarga, moksha, and not for making money. And arthasya dharma, antasya kamo labhayana smritam. Artha is also meant for dharma and not for enjoying, not for simply sense objects. And kamasya na indriya priti labho jivate yavate. The sense objects are not for satisfying the senses, but to accept only to sustain one's life. And jivasya tattva jigyasa nacha artha ekakarma. And what is the purpose of life? To understand tattva, the supreme reality, not just to make money. So this is the Bhagavata, philosophy of Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. That Artha, Dharma and Kama, they are also ultimately for Tattva Jigyasa, not to have them independently. So this is the opinion of others, scholars. So in two ways he explains this. Tatrapi moksha evartha atyantiktaya ishyate traivargyopi arthoyato nityam pitanta bhayasumutaha. So in the previous verse, although he said about dharma, artha, kama and moksha, but in this verse he says that actually out of these four only moksha is the worthy purushartha, proper human pursuit. That is the ultimate purushartha. He says atyantik tayasate. Why he says trivargyopi artho yato nityam kritam. He says this trivarga is always mixed with fear of death, because you lose it at the time that if you have some money, you have some property, then it is lost at the time of death. So for that reason he says that one should also understand this, that although dharma, artha, kama and moksha are four purusharthas prescribed, but among them the real purushartha is only moksha. Others are only intermediate. Why? Because they cannot be ultimate. Purushartha should be that once you have attained that goal, then there is nothing else to be attained. If you achieve it, and after that then you have to achieve something more and something more, then what kind of goal is this? Then this was something like you are going somewhere and then on the highway you stop to get some french fries. So that is not your destination, you are stopping there for a short period. You have to still move on. So Trivargas are like that. They give some little relief, and they don't solve the problem completely. Complete problem is solved only when moksha is attained. So therefore say that it is moksha is the ultimate one out of these four. Tatrapi teshopi madhya travargya trivargya. So this is only moksha. Then parevare cha ye bhava guna vyati karadanu nete sham vidyate ksheman isha vidvansita shisham. He said that all these objects, higher or lower in this world, they are all manifestations of the gunas of Prakriti. So we have Prakriti, from that Mahatattva, then Ahankar, then mind, senses, tanmatras, then gross elements. Then gross elements mixed together and give all the objects of this world. So these are all para and avara, higher or lower. All the objects, is bhava, gun, vyati, karat. These are all modifications of the gunas. Prakriti in the original state has the balanced gunas. Then there is an imbalance in the gunas. Then all the manifestations happen. But none of them is permanent. Nate sam vidyate kshinam isha vidhimsitasha. Because they are all destroyed by time. So time devours everything. So therefore it cannot be the ultimate welfare, Shema. Earlier the question was asked by Prithu Maharaj that we are here absorbed in these sense objects. How will we attain Shema? So now he says that Shema will come only from the moksha, not from anything else. Because everything else is full of fear. So fear because we are going to lose it. We fear things when we get a feeling that you are going to lose something in future. Fear is always of something happening in future. So it has not happened now. It's something which you think or you guess or you have a feeling that it's going to happen. You are going to lose something which you possess. So fear is always of losing some of your possessions. And if you are going to lose it, that means it was not yours to begin with. Because anything which is yours cannot be lost. And if you are losing it, it was not yours anyway. So don't worry. So bhaya sanyutatvam eva. In this verse, he is explaining what is the bhaya or what is the fear. Pare brahmadaya, avare indradaya chaye. Says the para here refers to Brahma, the first being. Avara refers to other beings who were born after Brahma, such as Indra, etc. Ye gunak shobhad anupashyad bhavanti. They all took birth after the disturbance of the gunas happened in the Prakriti. So this will be all destroyed with Dvansita Ashisham. Therefore there is no need in endeavoring for them. That is the idea. So now after this he is going to speak 4 more verses which are mixture of Advaitavad and then Bhakti. So that we will read tomorrow. Is there any question on this?
About this fear, to this idea that something belongs to us. So, but really speaking, nothing belongs to us. There is something which belongs to us. And you say ourselves, because you say the fear to lose is related.
No, there's nothing belongs. We assume that it belongs to us.
Yeah, material objects. That something belongs to us.
What?
Our original wealth.
What is that?
God or our
God
soul.
You don't know God.
Yes, I know.
God isn't lost.
Yeah, God is there.
Yeah, so if you know that, then you'll have no fear. If you understand that your wealth is God, then there is no fear. What is the fear then? Now we are understanding that our wealth is God's Maya. So then we will fear. Bhayam ditya abhinivesh tasya adhisadaketasya uparya smriti then Maya, because of Lord's Maya. So fear is only when you don't have that knowledge. Otherwise there is no fear. What is that song? Kar Koile Vishwas. That is I think found by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. कर ले तो और ये विश्वास कर ले तो something like that. And the meaning is that if we have this faith that we belong to God, God belongs to us, then there is no more fear. Bhanjoreman Sri Namananda Abhaya Charanaravinda.
But it's the Bhakti, it's Govinda Das.
It's been going
How do you explain this? These people who have lost themselves or their knowledge by too much indulgence and sense objects, that they become plants or trees. So this overindulgence or intense indulgence in sense objects is a very active, passionate activity or state of mind. So, by the law of cause and effect, how does this cause, like that mute and stable, or like becoming a mountain, no activity at all?
No, because he said that they are meditating on sense objects. So if you meditate on sense objects which are inert and immobile, then in vapis smaran bhavam teste ante kalayam.
Because the objects are actually lifeless.
And that's where your consciousness goes.
You were speaking about a loss of, saying that the greatest loss is the loss of oneself, and that one should do anything and everything, and no price is too high to pay to make sure that we don't lose ourselves. From my observation of the world, I would say that the vast majority never was born lost, never had a never had a self to lose, and when they're fortunate, come across the knowledge that there is a self, and that they maybe, if they're lucky, they regain the self that was lost maybe in many lives ago. But that, to me, it seems like the condition of most conditioned souls is that they already lost themselves a long time ago. They don't have a self to lose.
Yeah, that's another way of saying it. Actually, what you are saying is the reality, and this is another way of inspiring you to come back to the state. And if one has come to this, then not to lose it. If one has understood this, not become allured again by the same things, because this allurement is very powerful. So that's the idea behind it. Because obviously he is speaking to people who are not lost like that. Right.